Okay, we're going to call the December 5th meeting of the Park and Rec Advisory Committee to order, and it's approximately 7:04. We'll start with introductions.
Bob Burns.
Brian Watt.
Joyce Gifford.
Sean Datchler. Brian Burke.
Denise Kai, staff.
Scott Archer, staff.
And I am sitting in the chair position for Mike Mitchell. And that's about it for announcements on that end. But the first order or item on the order of agenda is the minutes, as usual. So unless someone has any additions to or changes to that, let me know right now. I think you all had a chance to read those. If you got a motion to...
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. So all in favor of approving the minutes from the October 24th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, great.
One of the guests who was at that meeting was not listed.
Okay.
Are you right here?
All right. Well, we'll get her name in the record then.
We can change that.
Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, item number 4, citizen comments on issues and items not on the agenda. I believe we have a citizen of the
Mr. Brian
the great
signed up.
city of Oregon City, which I do believe with all my heart since I grew up here.
You grew up here.
Yes, sir.
You're still growing.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, December 6, 2013, marks a milestone in the city of Oregon City. It will have been 18 months since the PRAC chair, Mike Mitchell, appeared before the Oregon City Commission to give a wonderfully glowing report on all of the achievements of PRAC the previous year. During the course of his comments at that time, 18 months ago, he made the announcement that PRAC, in the coming year, would be working on the comprehensive plan for the Glen Oaks and Filbert Run parks. Residents in the Filbert Run Park area approximately 20 years ago started contributing SDCs for parks as they purchased their homes from the builders and developers. We, in the Filbert Run neighborhood, are anxious to see that comprehensive plan actually happen, since it was stated 18 months ago that that was one of the goals for this commission. So we would appreciate whatever you can do to get, if it hasn't already gone out, a request for proposal for a consultant to get those two parks underway. Thank you.
And just for the record, sir, would you state your name for us?
Tom O'Brien, Oregon City resident, co-chair, Hazel Grove Westling Farms Neighborhood Association. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And just to speak on that, I mean, last month, or probably about 6 weeks ago now, when you guys were here last time, we did discuss that as well. It was part of our agenda, actually.
Yeah,
that
it was
we
announced that they were going to be going out.
Right,
with
correct.
the RFP.
So within that
Can you announce the website?
6 week period, maybe Scott has an update on that. I want to make sure I don't want to give any bad information out.
Sure. Actually, on the agenda in a little while, we can jump ahead now if you want to go out of order, but we do have some other folks that came to do a presentation. We're going to be talking about SDC updates and your goals in a little bit on the agenda, and that certainly is one of the discussion topics.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the other items that we've been doing and why we haven't gotten to that project. But,
Yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead in the agenda unless you ask me to do that. So, up to
You
you.
don't need to do that. I'm just anxious to see that RFP. is-
Yes, sir. Yep. And we
I promised at our last meeting here 6 weeks ago that it was going out shortly,
yes, sir.
but I haven't seen any evidence of that.
Yep. Do you want to give like a mini update on that right now, Scott, or a timing, or can you do that?
It's going to be it's kind of a lengthy discussion because it ties back into our work plan and all the other things. So I can't really give you a minute. It's going to be end up being like a 10-minute discussion. So yeah, because it connects in with all those other things that we need to talk about. So
Okay, thank you. And we're moving on to presentations. The Transportation Advisory Committee is here this evening, and they're going to talk about the Newell Creek Canyon Trails.
So just a quick intro while they're setting up. Blaine Meyer is the chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee, and John Lewis, who's handing you some info, is our Public Works Director. You probably know these two gentlemen or know of them or have seen them, and if not, that's who they are. And they've asked to have some time on your agenda to give you a presentation tonight, so I'll just let them kind of give you that info.
Blaine's going to take the lion's share of this because this is his passion. I just told him I'd be here.
I'm Blaine Meyer and from unincorporated Oregon City, and we just wanted to bring you up to speed on what we've been doing in terms of cyclotourism, and so I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the Oregon City Trail Alliance, give you a little history. Back in 2011, I was invited to the...
Can I interrupt you for just a second? Before you guys do that, do you want to maybe... I assume most folks know what the Transportation Advisory Committee is, but maybe do you want to kind of explain what that... Okay, yeah, you're probably going to cover that then. I just wanted to make sure they understood the...
You mean the Transportation Advisory Committee or the Trail Alliance?
No, the Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Oh, I can do that. Yeah,
Just a quick, like, what the connection is, that it's another city committee and that kind of thing.
That's right. So the Transportation Advisory Committee is made up of actually 9 members as of just recently here. So we're a full committee, similar to the Parks and Recreational Advisory Committee. It's an advisory committee, deals mostly with transportation related issues. We've got a monthly meeting like you've got, full agenda, and Blaine's been the chair of that for 2 years now, and we just had elections, so Blaine's no longer the chair, but still on the committee. We're going strong. We did accomplish a fair amount of work there. Just got through our transportation system plan, which was probably one of the biggest pieces of work that the committee's taken on. But anyway, that's Transportation Advisory.
Yeah, I just thought that might help.
We meet
Third
Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So feel free to show up whenever you like.
Only if you guys promise to come to every one of these meetings.
Well, sometimes we get goodies. I don't know, do you guys get goodies here at your meetings? So
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, in 2011, I went to the Clackamas County, the Travel Oregon. It's called the Cycle Tourism Studios, and they've been having these all around cities here in the area. They're now out in East Multnomah County, but from that. That was the inspiration for opening First City Cycles, which I own on Main Street. And then David Blair, who at the time was Ron Wyden's number 2 guy, and he's an avid cyclist, and we were talking. He says, if you want to get these things going, you really need to start an organization like the Sisters Alliance, Trail Alliance. So we kind of benchmarked that organization and started the Oregon City Trail Alliance in 2012. And so the mission of the Trail Alliance is to develop, maintain, and promote a networked system of bike and ped trails in the Oregon City area to encourage personal health and safety, environmental stewardship, and economic vitality. So pretty basic, but right now, the Oregon City Trail Alliance is working very hard to find out what other organizations are doing and have done, and look at their system plans and so forth. So, and that includes regional, state, county, city, and then we don't want to duplicate their efforts, but to try and find out what trails and connections they have prioritized, and then see what we can do as an organization to facilitate that, through various fundraising efforts or whatever it may be. So our objectives are to partner with government agencies and trail advocacy groups to develop a 10-year plan, and then to partner with city staff, city advisory committees like yourself, Clackamas Community College, and local businesses and environmental groups to educate the community about stewardship and sustainability with regard to trails. We want to work with Travel Oregon and Mount Hood Territory Tourism to increase active transportation in our area, as well as adventure tourism in Oregon City. So just a little more background to give you an idea of what cyclotourism, what's happening with cyclotourism, and eventually I'll get to how this pertains to you and why we're sharing this tonight. Cyclotourism, this is from a handout from Clackamas County Tourism. $400 million was spent on cyclotourism in Oregon in 2012. Just 2012, $400 million. $46 million of that was spent in the Hood River Gorge area. Cyclotourists are 65% men, 35% women. 72% are from the ages of 35 to 64, so this isn't a kid thing. The majority are adults. 77% of cyclotourists have bachelor degrees. 50% have incomes between $75,000 and $200,000. 73% live in Oregon, and the balance live in Washington, Idaho, and other places. $20.3 million was spent in lodging and food just in Hood River Gorge. $20.3 million lodging and food. $174 million total for lodging and food in Oregon. 41,000 overnight visits in 2012. So cyclotourism is big business. And so some of the tourism-related efforts that our First City Cycles and the Oregon City Trail Alliance have been working on recently, our goals are to increase OCTA membership, and we've been working hard at that. We want to continue mapping. We're opening in the spring. We're activating the Amtrak train depot, and part of that will be a bike bistro, food, drink, and so forth. The other half will be the Oregon City Trail Alliance, a map room where people can go and plan and have meetings, and there'll be maps floor to ceiling, so we can do a lot of planning for our area for cyclotourism. We're also working on bike jumps and pump tracks, which are big tourist draws. And then we want to work on the Oregon City Trail Loop, which is a loop that would connect the Blue Heron site up through Kanema and around to the college, and then down through Newell Creek, and connect the whole loop there through Clackamas Cove, Clackamas Park, and John Storm Park.
Is that on your document here that you've given us, that last one?
I'd have to look at that in terms of.
Well, the last page, it's got that rail alignment, the old rail alignment. So if that's what you mean, that's part of the loop.
Part of the loop, yeah. And by the way, that loop is on several different transportation plans, regional, and it's amazing when you start digging into it how many things in Oregon City are on regional and county transportation plans. And then the last one is the Newell Creek Canyon Trails and Bike Path. And so that's what we're here really to. I just wanted to give you that as kind of background to give you an update on the Newell Creek Canyon project. We've been working with Metro. As you know, Metro owns most of the land. The city owns, I would say, maybe a quarter
Of Newell Creek
of
Canyon?
Newell Creek.
I don't believe so.
Some of it, I know. And
probably
then,
not a quarter.
And then also there are some private parties that own some property in the canyon. Do y'all know where Newell Creek is? Along 213 there? Okay. So the goal is to develop a trail system in Newell Creek Canyon, and Metro. I met with Dan Moeller Metro, and he said that that building a trail system in that canyon is one of Metro's highest priorities. Of course, the caveat is that there is no funding. So they were very pleased that the Trail Alliance, the Oregon City Trail Alliance, was working to build a groundswell of support for that. Metro wants to see the local support, and of course, to find the $50,000 that they estimated for a master plan. A master plan would include public hearings and work with the International Mountain Biking Association, others. They've been very well known for their plans that are, sustainable, that take care of the environment and the water systems. Again, I met with Dan Moeller. I also met with Janet Bebb, and she's the Metro Principal Regional Planner. So I met with her about 3 months ago. And she said, given the level of interest and support for this project in Oregon City, they believe that an initial trail system could be built by 2016. So I thought that sounds pretty optimistic, but she was very excited about the project. On December 5th, actually yesterday, she sent me an email and said, "We'll start scoping this project the first of the year, and I'll be in touch about getting together to get your ideas, who we should talk with. I've copied our new planning manager, Mark Davison, and mentioned to him that you have a network of people interested in the project. We should be in full swing with the process this spring. I'm looking forward to it." So to date, what we've done is we've led 4 hikes into the canyon. And what we're trying to do is find out what trails are there now and just kind of scope out. Close to 400 acres, the place is just huge. You'll notice on the last page, or this black and white copy. I apologize for all the little notes, but you'll notice that here's 213 that runs here, and so the college would be over here, and this is Malala that runs here. So this is the canyon right in this area here, and what we've done is this is Nelson Nautilus. We came in right behind Nelson Nautilus here, and went down, and it felt like we were walking all day. And you can just see how small an area we covered in that. And then we went down near, these are the Newell Creek apartments, and there's a trail system that goes in there, and we've spent a good couple of times down through that area. Then we went to Ogden Middle School, which is up here in the top right, and came down on that side of Highway 213. And that was not a well-developed trail. They're literally, maybe a foot wide path, defined, but just, I think people used them to go hunt crawdad. We found some traps down in the creeks there. So we've done those. We've led Clackamas Community College, 3 or 4 of the foundation members, and Ron Adams was in a meeting. He didn't go on the hike, but we had a meeting with Ron Adams, who's he's the chair of the college board. And so they're very interested in Newell Creek Canyon and partnering with that, with us on that project. So we've had some good partners. So if you look, I'll tell you what we found in Newell Creek Canyon on our trips in. We have found, and John went on at least one of them, if not 2.
Yeah, been on one.
Amazing beauty. It is just, if you've never been in there, it is, go down through Nelson's Knoll and back, and it's just, you get inside and it just opens up into this phenomenal canopy, just beautiful. We found a patchwork of trails, and of course we found a lot of invasive species. Some of you may know Brian Boyce. He's been on a couple of the hikes, and he's the chair of the Natural Resources Committee. We've also found a number of vagrant camps, a lot of garbage a lot of abandoned shopping carts. Pretty nasty. And we don't recommend that people go down there without, having several people go with you, because you never know what you're going to run into. But the canyon is being abused by the vagrants, garbage everywhere. And so one of our goals is to do cleanup to organize cleanup there. We also found the old, I don't know if you knew, but there used to be the Willamette Valley Southern Rail system that went from Portland. But if you look on the map, this little clear map, Google, you'll see that it starts down here at 15th on McLaughlin and then ran along Abernathy Road and then cut across, and there were some trestles in there that, of course 213 wasn't there at the time, but went across 213 and there were some trestles that have now been demolished. We hiked down, if you'll notice back on this map, we hiked down on the other side of 213 where the old school and remember the buses used to be all in there, and we walked back in there, and there's an old PGE road, but we were hiking, looking, and we found just about maybe half a mile just straight. You can tell that's where the railroad went, and of course there are no rails or ties or anything like that there, but and a lot of that's I think is now private property. But surprisingly, this trail here is actually on several of the transportation system plans, the active transportation system plan, regional, yeah, that this is what they have basically on as far as a route for a commuter path. So this is not technically in Newell Creek Canyon, but it would be a way to connect, the lower part of Oregon City with the upper part of Oregon City, and would follow that grade. I think.
Well, and just to be clear, that particular path is more of a shared use path, more like a paved, 15 foot wide path that is not what Blaine's talking about in the canyon, right?
Yes. And that's a good point. In the canyon, what it would be, if now Metro is how do I say this? It's a big organization, and they have their policies, and they've been very open to the idea of having designated separate trail systems in Newell Creek. One for the commuter path, which would be, like John says, a mixed use, probably 10 feet wide, paved, and so walkers, bikers, and whatnot could use that. In the canyon would be a hiking trail system, and then a separate, what they call single track downhill mountain bike. That's where you have this tourist draw on the economic impact. That's why I shared all of that economic information. Have any of you ever heard of Sandy Ridge? Okay. Sandy Ridge was built on forest land out in Sandy, and it draws, I've heard, between 50 and 70,000 cyclists, mountain biking enthusiasts there every year.
There's a pretty good article on Oregon Live on that particular amenity. Just recently, just a couple days ago. International draw. Yeah.
And their numbers are sometimes doubling annually.
It's impressive too. Have you ridden that, Sean? Yeah, it's good.
We have, the nice thing about having the bike shop is we have a lot of people we can kind of beta test ideas, and the idea of having Newell Creek, and people just go, you've got to be kidding me, this close to an urban center, they just keep saying this is just off the chart cool if it happens. So, I don't want to speculate as to how many, but I would say we would meet and exceed Sandy Ridge easily. So that's kind of, and we're hoping that Metro will, all of the people we've talked to so far have been very agreeable, but now the next step will be to form a committee, and that's what Janet was referring to in her email, that the next step will be to form a committee that'll begin the work on and the public hearings and putting a plan together and so forth. So the Oregon City Trail Alliance will continue to network with committees like yourself and with the Transportation Advisory Committee, Natural Resources Committee. We definitely want all of you, or a representative, I should say, at the table with us, so that from your you can have your input into this as it unfolds and evolves. So again, we want to continue mapping as we get this committee, which it sounds like it'll happen in this spring, that this committee will come together. We'll continue our mapping efforts, and Recons will also keep building consensus between various organizations, the greater Watershed Council, and there's several environmental groups, the college and others, to make sure we have everybody represented. We'll organize cleanup efforts, explore grant writing, develop the master plan, start trail building in 2015. That's kind of the goal that we're looking to start the trail, and then we have that open to the public in 2016. So, bottom line, this is one thing I've said every time I've ever given a presentation, that our number one concern is not. Obviously, we love the tourism, the cycling would be great, getting people in there to hike and enjoy. But the bottom line is, if an environmentally sustainable trail system cannot be built in this canyon, then we don't want to be a part of the project. That's got to be the priority. It's an environmentally sensitive watershed, and but I have done research with on the International Mountain Biking Association. They have an excellent reputation for not only meeting but exceeding environmental standards. So there's a movie that I would recommend if any of you have Netflix streaming. You can get it there. I do have a copy if you'd like to borrow it. It's called Pedal Driven, and it's a story about outlaw mountain bikers in Leavenworth, Washington. And they were building trails, and people were coming and tearing them down, and then they'd rebuild the jumps, and they would be torn down, and it got into a conflict between these outlaw mountain bikers and the Forest Service. Well, at some point they decided, let's meet. Instead of going back and forth like this, let's meet and talk, and maybe we can find a way. Well, it all ended in sunshine and hugs, and it's just a great demonstration of how, if you work together, you can do something that is very responsible and controlled, and something that is enjoyed by everyone. So recommend that movie. We meet, the Oregon City Trail Alliance meets on the last Wednesday of every month, and we meet down at the bike store up in the loft at 6:30. So anytime you're invited. We are working on a website. We do have Facebook, so we're good on that. And our executive board president is Adam, which is on your committee, and then our VP is Bob Tice, secretary is Tom Batty, and then I'm the treasurer. So that is about all I have on that.
The only other thing I'll add is, probably a lot of the reason is because Blaine's on our chair of our Transportation Advisory Committee, but biking solutions, alternate modes of transportation are pretty important for the Transportation Advisory Committee. So this topic has come up, and because of my interest in mountain biking and just recreational biking as well, Blaine and I have talked over the years. So because of that, that's kind of why it came up at the TAC level, and we talked about the fact that it was kind of some things were moving. That was probably 3 or 4 months ago that we were pretty hot and heavy in that conversation. And Blaine was talking about his conversations with Metro, and at that time we weren't sure about the approach with Metro, whether Metro's was going to be interested in single track kind of application or amenity in Knoll Canyon, and so we're still not really sure where that's going to go. But we felt like talking to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee would make some sense, and just to kind of test the waters here and find out if this group sees that as an interest area. We've got several members on the TAC who are, I think, a lot more in tune with economic development than mountain biking, but they see that there's benefits to that as well. So anyway, there's that, and then there's just besides single track, the city's transportation system plan. Sean, I know, has seen it. I'm not sure how many of you have spent much time looking at it, but there's a variety of not necessarily single track, but shared use bike paths that are showed both on our roadway system and in other shared use alignments. And we're also seeing that on the regional level. So, when we talk about long-range funding and long-range plans, sometimes those are very long range. I mean, the regional transportation plan is a 25-year plan. But this loop trail is really something that I would, expect to see the Parks and Rec Advisory Board be very supportive of, because probably you guys have trails on master plan as well. All that kind of came together in the transportation system plan, and then when we start looking towards funding in the regional transportation plan, imagine a loop that you could hop on a bicycle and again, starting at the waterfront in downtown Oregon City, up through Kenema, through the new Metro acquisition land, out South End Road, on the south, skirting the south end of the city, whether it be a separate path or a connection of separate paths and bike lanes, on-street bike lanes, but still gets you around, skirts you around the south end, up, through.
Connected to the parks.
Connected to the parks, connected to the community college, with, maybe some other alternatives that bring you right into the heart of Oregon City, but, the loop concept brings you all the way around. So, it's just it's a high interest area for the Transportation Advisory Committee. I think it's the city's committed to it. I know our city commission's very committed to it, and so I guess it was just made sense to bring that forth, especially since we weren't really sure how supportive Metro was going to be at the time. And I think if you've spent any time in some of these areas that we're talking about, whether it be the Newell Canyon or now the Kenema area and some of the work that Scott and you folks have done with that, as those areas kind of become acquired and we start talking about what Metro wants to do with them, there's some real potential there. And Metro, it's been my experience that Metro really knows what they're doing with a lot of these things, but they're also real cautious about single track. And but again, it's another form, another mode, and definitely some of these numbers about economics are, to me, fairly new. I didn't realize how I spend a lot of money when I go for a mountain bike ride. I usually have to stop and get pizza and beer on the way home, of course, so it's just it does that for a community. And so given all the discussion we have about, ways to get our economy moving, this one seems like a real good one.
Couple of just kind of add-on comments. What you're saying, we do talk about trail connections and connectivity. I know it's been one of the things on PRAC's list has been making these connections via the signage or the trails plan. We do have the loop trail, the Oregon City Loop Trail that John's referring to is part of our 2004 Trails Master Plan. That's when it was adopted. That's easily found on our website if you haven't been able to, if you don't have that already. I know we've talked about that before. And so that's all in that. And then that basically, I think we kind of extracted that and put it into the updated transportation system plan that was just adopted earlier this year. So there is I think there's some good overlap discussion here with PRAC and with this issue, because we talk about that a lot. And then this also ties in a lot of the regional stuff. And Blaine, I appreciate all that good information. The regional stuff, and this is just, I think, a good reminder for all of us, for you guys, if you guys want to bring it back to the Transportation Committee, but also for you on the Parks and Rec Committee, that we are one of the early members of the Intertwine Alliance. And we've talked about that, but we don't talk about it all the time. It's just, this is a good reminder of that. And that is a regional, metro area alliance of parks providers, open space owners, agencies that have this interest, that are basically it's a branded effort to promote connection between between parks and open spaces and community. So not just within Oregon City, but from Oregon City, how do you get to the next connections? And we actually have on our website the logo of the Intertwine Alliance, and there's some links to that information. It's a good opportunity just to kind of refresh ourselves about that information, that we're Oregon City is a member. I go to these Intertwine Alliance meetings. Denise goes to a lot of regional trails meetings and so forth. So there's that as well, and that might be something to talk about at the TAC meeting. Look, you can Google Intertwine Alliance. It's an effort that's been growing and growing. There's a lot of interest in that, and Metro's got a lot of effort behind that.
Well, we just had an article. I wrote an article for the Intertwine blog.
I read that, yeah.
Yeah, and it was
That's
printed.
right. So you're quite familiar, because you were on that. Yeah, that's right. I saw you in the newsletter. So.
They had a great. The editor found a really cool video of Oregon City in the falls,
Yeah.
and that whole.
I saw that.
I'd never seen that, so
Yeah.
if you'll Google that. But one of the things too for Parks and Rec, we're working on. We gave a proposal to the Cove developers. We haven't heard back from them, but they've got a lot of fish in the fry pan, so to speak, right now. But we're trying to get a jumps built and also pump track, and those are big tourist draws, and especially the jumps to get them to competition level so that you can attract these. Competitions to come, and those are heads in beds. I mean, and so we've applied for a $65,000 grant from Clackamas County Tourism, and we've gotten to tier 3. So I guess that's the last tier. So it's looking pretty favorable. But they see the vision for becoming a real cycle tourism center, Oregon City becoming kind of an epicenter for that. In fact, the train depot, we're working with Amtrak, and we'll do packages to where we bring tourists in on Amtrak and step off the platform, and then have a number of different options, recreational options here in the local area that they can do. And Joyce is she's developing which has a lot to do with.
Working on, yes.
What's that?
Working on it.
Yes, developing a volunteer program for Amtrak. When that's activated when it opens in the spring, every passenger coming or going will be greeted by volunteers. So we have a handbook, and she's putting together the whole program, and we're pretty excited about that. So. I'm good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any comments or questions, guys?
Yeah, I just want to say I think I'm a huge advocate of this. Adam brought it up a month or so ago to me, and I was really excited. So I'm really excited now to hear that it's gone further. I knew it was kind of just a groundswell. And as a mountain bike advocate, I agree with what you're doing. That article in the Oregonian about Sandy Ridge was amazing. The numbers were staggering, and I'll spend that money this summer when we go to Oak Ridge and ride. So it makes sense when I start equating it out. And we're always trying to see how we get the museums open, and this is one more thing that would help. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate your efforts.
Yep.
It's great.
You're welcome.
Just
Bob?
a couple of things. One is I'm impressed with the extent of the data that you've collected, and that's one thing. The other thing is there's a planning effort going on right now in the south end of Oregon City, Clackamas County, and there's a plan before the Planning Commission. And they had the first hearing a week or so ago. Another hearing's coming up in the next, I think it's the 9th of this month. I could be wrong on the date. But it has provision for bike trails and walking trails that I'm sure that you know about that, but if you don't, you might look into that.
Yeah, good point.
And I just have one thing. It's on my mind as far as the loop trail, and of course there's also other ways to get up the hill. And when you talk about economic impact, I'm wondering when or the initial trail design, or when we start looking at, or Metro starts looking at it in 2014, but then some sort of an initial trail is developed potentially in 2016. Are we limited to that loop trail, or can we think about other ways to get up the hill to actually show that individual or those individuals all of the economic opportunities or places to eat, etc., on the way up the hill. If they join the trail from, the river, or coming out of Gladstone, or maybe they rode 99 all the way from Portland, or the other way actually
Valley Trail or
from
something like
Canby.
that, yeah.
So I'm thinking there's different ways to get up to the trailheads in Newell Creek that would show a group of bikers, what they could do after they bike, or maybe they'll probably need to stop at the Singer Hill Coffee or somewhere else to get a little bite to eat on the way up the hill. That was not a promo, really, for Singer Hill, but I just thought
Well, that's a good point. There, that's always when we talk about trying more active transportation as opposed to vehicle transportation. I would say on average the community struggles with the idea of biking from the lower level of Oregon City to the upper level, and for good reason. I mean, it's
right.
It is. So, I kind of wonder when we start talking about this loop trail if that couldn't be designed in a way that maybe those that are less adventure bicyclists and more kind of recreational bicyclists that could use those paths as a maybe a little bit longer route, but a route that could be managed. The other thing, one thing that you might be interested in hearing about is the city just executed a contract with a consultant who's going to do a corridor study along Lynn from basically Jackson and Fifth. So just up the hill here, as Lynn maneuvers up to the hilltop up there, we've heard, that's been a long time concern about safety for pedestrians and bicyclists along that stretch of road. And there's not easy solutions, I will say that, but we are going to do a corridor study that's going to include that leg. It's going to take it all the way out to Myers Road near Moccasin, which is kind of that low dip in Myers Road. Look at that corridor for not only, there's not going to be a lot of change with regard to drivers, with the exception of maybe the intersection there. We're going to look at the roundabout idea that's been proposed for a long time at Warner Milne and Leland, Lynn, that whole intersection. So we're going to flesh out those concepts a little bit more. But that's really kind of the main driving solution. But there's potential for much better walking solutions along there and much better bike path solutions.
Well, I'm advocating for a rope tow there on Lynn.
I was going to say, are escalators out of the question financially?
Well, I
was hoping for zip lines, but
elevator.
that's an example of something where the city's recognized that we've got there's some barriers for bicyclists to try to get from one part of town to the other. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you meant, but that's one thing that the city's going to pursue is that study, that kind of study.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you said economic impact, I thought, why not show them we want to encourage them to spend some time in some parts of the city. If they're their first time to Oregon City, they wouldn't know where to go, or, they could explore after the ride or whatever, but that was my comment.
Well, and kind of what I envision is that anybody that comes to that, there would be a kiosk there with, maps and information that, if they were done, one person's talking about maybe having a shuttle that would take people from down and then bring them up 213 back to the trailhead so that they can, go round and round and round. So, but when they're done, they can get in their car and drive down to Singer Hill. That's a good place to go.
Well, just let them know that when I was about 11 and 12 years old, I rode my one-speed bike up 7th Street, delivering papers, and Wednesday was the hardest day. So it has been done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
9th Street is the best.
Yeah, it is. That is a good street. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to general business. 6A, designated off-leash dog area recommendations.
I recommend, if we can, maybe go out of order now and address that 10-minute topic for our guests.
That's fine.
Yeah. So we can move down. That sounds fine to me as well. So, what number or letter are we on?
You think?
Is it G?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to, when we got to that point in the agenda, I really think it ties into F as well, which is this started with, at the last meeting, I brought up the issue of being, that PrAC is kind of overdue at this point to give your annual report to the commission. We were reminded of that by the commission and the city recorder who tracks that. And so at some point you need to give your 5-minute or 10-minute annual report to the commission, which is just kind of a highlight of things that are going on. And the commission has sort of made that a point of emphasis now, that they've asked every board to come before the commission and do that. And
We decided that last month as to who was doing that.
well, so yeah, that's what I was going to
I
say.
think the when was not decided.
The
though.
when was not decided, and it was you asked at the last meeting, so you kind of left it a little bit open, like let's try to figure that out. Mike was going to try to figure something out. I don't want to get too deep into the woods here, off track, but Mike, since the last meeting, has also kind of notified me, and I think he copied everybody in the same email, or maybe it's just the one that he said. So he kind of asked me to say this, I guess, to you tonight, that his work schedule has been kind of changing and becoming a little bit more intensive as far as travel. He travels a lot for work, and he sort of said he would take on the chair position this year, one more year he was last year, but he was a little hesitant about doing it because of his schedule, and it's kind of gotten, he said, to the point now where like he couldn't be here tonight because of that conflict, and he said going forward he's a little concerned. I think he's still going to be okay to stay on the committee, but he said he definitely won't be able to do the chair position any further. We need to elect officers at the next meeting anyway. The January meeting is when you elect your officers, and he said he's definitely out for being the chair any further, so be thinking about that. We're losing a couple of members, so we're going to talk about that in a little bit on the membership stuff, but I think the point is I'm not sure if Mike is going to have the time, whether he'll have the time to go in front of the commission or not, and he's not here to speak for himself, so I can't say that, but he was going to do that on behalf of PrAC, so might need to have a plan B. The next in line, Lisa had a conflict tonight as well. So I'm kind of throwing that at you, but then also, sorry for all the information here, but also you asked me at the last meeting in connection to the annual report, why don't we refresh about the goals? And so I sent those with your agenda, and you've got those. That's the connecting point to what I was getting at here, where it kind of ties then it ties into the SDC stuff. That was also a request of PrAC to bring back some information about the SDCs and sort of just an update on where we're at. So this whole thing ties together. So it kind of ends up being two. So you need to determine what you want to do, and I know you're missing 3 members. So whether you want to try to figure this out tonight, or what you want to do about when to give a report to the commission at some point in the reasonable near future, whatever that means. You got holidays coming up, so that gets a little tricky with meetings and things. If it's after the first of the year, that's probably fine. But somewhat shortly after the first of the year, we probably need to, somebody from PrAC needs to just
Yeah, I'm thinking February, March. We ought to shoot for that.
Yeah, at least
timeframe.
if there was a date certain, that would be good. Well, that's easy for you to say because you're not on the committee anymore then, right?
Yeah.
I'm only kidding.
Well, January then. Let's
Coming
shoot
back,
for
then,
January.
No, I'm just kidding. I vote I don't have a vote, but I suggest we have Brian come back in honor and in honorarium and do a report to the commission. No, I think you kind of started that for PrAC, didn't you? Weren't you?
That was fun, yeah.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Yes, sir. That's correct. For the record.
So you need to sort of maybe establish at least a little bit of a timeline. You can talk about your goals, and I brought that to you at your request. So whatever the issues that you wanted to do, or if you wanted to just kind of refresh that, I'll leave that to you. And then, as I said, you asked me to bring an SDC's update, so I've provided you some info at your places tonight. I can kind of run through that a little bit right now. Do you want to take these one at a time, or do you want me to just kind of give you my whole thing and then I'll be done talking? But I feel like it all ties together. So.
Before we move off the topic, I think we should, just because the next meeting is in January. I think we should make a decision on on when to brief the commission, because it's, I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm thinking if not February, then March. January is a little too soon. We meet in January, so is February too soon? I don't think so, but because it's the end of February, right?
Well, it could be, well, the PrAC meeting is the end of February. Is that what you're asking?
That's what I'm, yeah, correct.
Right. But the commission meets the
Oh,
first,
that's right, commission is.
commission meetings are the
exactly.
first and third Wednesdays.
Right.
So
Which could be the third
yeah.
Wednesday.
It might
February.
depend a little bit, too, on who is going to be the chair. Typically, the chair has gone and given the report, and you'll elect a chair in January at your first meeting of the year. So that might, you know, whoever that person is their availability might influence that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard too. I mean, if we talk about goals, I would almost suggest that we hold off on goals. You got 3 missing tonight, plus
2
you'll
leaving.
have 2 new guys or gals here that can provide input for that. So I'd hate the 5 of us tonight to kind of, you know, push that forward, other than maybe giving our opinion. But I would say your new commission that starts January 1st would be a great time to talk about goals. They're kind of tied together here.
My opinion is kind of the same. I don't think we have enough of next year's quorum to be making decisions. I think this is a good time to bring it up. I hadn't seen this year's goals being a new member on the committee. I think the important part for this for me was to see SDCs, where we were at, how that applies to RFPs, things like that. So while speaking to the commission and giving them an overview is important, I don't think it has to be done immediately, or really is even an immediate priority, as opposed to getting the new members up to speed, making the decisions, and then going forward.
Yeah. I think that's, just so you know, I mean, it's totally up to you. I think that's very reasonable, given the circumstances of the change in the membership of the board and having probably new officers in January and, you know, the whole thing. So I don't think that's unreasonable at all, just my opinion. And I can, you know, if anybody asks, I can communicate that, hey, the PrAC is looking at doing it maybe in the first third of the year. And I think it's pretty reasonable. And then I think it's a really good point about the goals and the new folks. You've only got 3 people here that are going to be on the commission and are on the committee next year.
We're going to make some lofty goals tonight. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't there a term for that when the old board encumbrance of the new members or something like that when you're going off the board or something? So.
Bob.
It looks like a lot of the goals that we set in 2012 would be ongoing. I think some have been achieved, but many or most would be ongoing. And with maybe a few new ones sprinkled in. So I think we should wait, get new officers, and have that in place, then have a good conversation about what we do about the unfinished goals, add the new ones in that we want to take on, and then be able to present those to the commission in our report. So
Yeah.
March maybe.
So I can communicate that back to the commission if there's any questions about when or which groups are coming forward when. I'll be sure to communicate that on your behalf.
You know, we haven't done this before, but just looking at these goals, they're really important ones. But it seems to me, most boards, when they do things like this, they set these in a work session or a retreat. And I don't know if we ever do that. I don't remember hardly any work sessions, but maybe near the first part of the year we should consider that as we bring new members on, to get them up to speed, to be able to sit across the table and have discussion on these rather than kind of in this type of a setting. Just a thought.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, we'll help you. Staff will help you accommodate whatever the committee wants to do. Maybe once we get the new makeup of the committee in the first part of the year, you might want to suggest that again and then see what folks want to do. Okay. So we can definitely accommodate that.
Okay.
So, if can I add some more comments in here because I want to get back to the. I know we need to answer the question that you were asking me to respond to Mr. O'Brien's comments earlier, and that does tie into things here. So the SDC's update is I provided you with basically that's in a couple of pages, an excerpt directly out of our budget book. That's our adopted Parks Development budget, and that is that's typically we sort of commonly refer to it as the SDC budget, but it's more than just SDCs. There are different revenue sources. There are grants. There are intergovernmental funds that we receive, say from agreements with Metro. There are miscellaneous incomes that we get from different things. But the bulk of that, or the primary thing, is its system development charges, which, and just as a quick refresher, is we charge among a number of different types of system development charges on any new construction, either single family, multifamily, or commercial. We do charge one of the SDCs we charge is parks, and for kind of a ballpark idea. The parks SDC, they get adjusted by some inflationary factors every January 1st, and so that's in the process right now being worked on for the next year's what the SDC's charges will be. But we are in the range right now for a new single family home. I think we're right around $3,600 per dwelling for the parks part of it, and there are several SDCs that the city charges. So, and of course, again, the justification for that and the reason that SDCs exist is it's an impact fee for basically buying into the system, and you're creating a new impact, so therefore we can create new things. And so that's how we do the majority of our parks acquisition and development. We usually supplement that with grants. So we'll take a project and we'll go out and try to match dollars or at least leverage some of our money for grants. We've been really successful at doing that with our park projects and have had good we've had good success with that. So that's what this report is, the SDC, or it's actually called the Parks Development Fund. If you have specific questions about that, I'd be happy to answer it, or if you want to just kind of digest it and ask me questions later, whatever you want to do. And then getting back to, again, this is why I'm kind of switching between F and G. Yes.
So that lines up with the goals, right? I see
Yeah.
2013 to 2015 as well.
Correct.
On
yeah.
both
And by
of
the
those.
way, thanks for that reminder
Yeah.
too, Brian. It's a 2-year budget this year. As of July 1st, we adopted our first ever 2-year budget, and so that represents 2 years of information. So the money and the projects listed, and you can see we kind of have our highlighted goals and projects on there, and so some of the big ones are on there, and the completion of the master plans for the 2 new park properties, Filbert Run and Glen Oak, are on there. They're funded in our SDC, our Park Development Plan. They are an ongoing. They have been a goal of Prax for a few years now. We've had a lot of goals that we've been trying to work through, and so another thing that I gave you is that it says. Let's see. It's in your info there somewhere. Community Services Department goals achieved and performance highlights 2013. So that is just for informational purposes. I had to put together recently a list of information for goals related stuff. We do a lot of continuous reporting to the commission of goals and accomplishments, so that we're reporting what's going on, and so having just done that, I had that information at my fingertips. As I was reviewing this agenda tonight, it occurred to me that this might be a handy piece of information for PRAC to have. And what I've done there, it's a front and back 2-page. It's not all representative of everything that we do, but it's just I think it's a good reminder to the committee for a couple things. One, there are a lot of things on there that you've had listed as your goals, either this current goal cycle or even in past cycles, that have been accomplished. And there are also a lot of things on there that are not on your goals list that we're still under the commission's direction, or just it's our operating day-to-day operational things that we as staff are obligated to accomplish on behalf of the city. And for example, just kind of going down the list there's I'm not going to go through it all. You've got it and you can look at it, but the daily operations is something that kind of gets lost. We always talk about let's do these projects and all these things, but we also every single day, actually 7 days a week, we are running a department of with a lot of different functions, and those are all kind of just listed as reminders. And we are the city commission. Their goal number 2 is to complete the Ermatinger House project. So we've spent a lot of effort on that. We've made a lot of leeway and a lot of progress, and we think that we're going to be beginning construction of that next year to do the renovation. We've completed a number of other things. There's probably kind of smaller things that are kind of sprinkled in there that you are sort of easy to forget that we do, but lots of little facility improvements that Denise and Kathy at the Pioneer Center and Rochelle at the pool have worked on to continue to improve those facilities. We negotiated a new 5-year lease with Sportcraft Marina. We're continuing to do lots of projects with the high school group. We completed the POMC, the memorial at Mountain View Cemetery last year, or this year, I should say. We reopened the end of the Oregon Trail Center, which was no small task. It was a very big effort. Took a lot of staff time. We've done some smaller projects like the Clean Rivers projects, the Arts Alliance things where we did the new entryway art piece at Clackamas, the new bike rack at the end of the Oregon Trail site. We're continuing our goal of doing tree plantings, which is a commission objective that we've been carrying out for the last few years. We redid the parking lot at Chapin Park, which has been very high on our list of things that needed to get done. We just got that done this fall. Lots of other things. So again, the point of that is just to remind you of all the things that are always kind of ongoing, and then also there's some big check marks of projects completed and that kind of thing. And in the midst of all that, the recent last few weeks, it's I'm kind of jumping ahead into my staff report here, but I think it's appropriate time to let you know this, and as it sort of falls into this whole thing, is that I was going to announce to you under my staff reports. You may or may not have heard this by now, but Larry Potter has retired since our last PRAC meeting, and we had an extra week here because of the jumping over the Thanksgiving, so it's been 5 weeks. But he decided that there were some benefits for him retiring sooner than later. He was eligible to retire for the last, I think about the last year or so, and made the decision to do so, and has already done so. So. We had a short kind of a notification period there, and we had to do some things really quickly because he oversees a very large part of our department with the parks operations and the cemetery, and which are very busy functions. So what we've done in the interim is Denise has kind of slid in there and is running the parks and cemetery operations for us on a day-to-day basis right now, while still trying to maintain a lot of what she does on a day-to-day basis as well. And I'm trying to help pick up some pieces here. And the whole point of that simply being that I wanted to announce that to you so that you're aware that Larry has retired and is not with us anymore. And that we're already not well-staffed anyway, as you all know. And we've been doing some double time on some things. So, needless to say, the last about 5 or 6 weeks has been even more busy than normal. This is not a complaint, just a fact. And we're while Denise is sort of covering, we're working on going forward and how we're going to recruit for that position, and do we want to make any adjustments to that? You always take a look at things when there's a vacancy. You take a look. Is there some things we want to do differently? Do we want we're kind of thinking about some of those things. So we're not rushing to fill that position as quickly as possible. We're sort of taking our time and thinking a little bit. So that's a lot of information. I was just kind of giving you sort of a whole bunch of reports at once there. And then I do
Awesome.
want to, I'll wrap up with this, and then you can ask me questions or if you have any other discussion or what have you. But the master planning process for the 2 parks is still very much going to get done. It was intended to be advertised last month. I think I just gave you a little explanation about some, probably some reasons why we diverted some of our work time to some other things. It is actually going to be advertised in the next, probably within the next week. The document is basically prepared. It's just there's some things that we have to do to get it advertised. So we're very much on track to do the project. We haven't forgotten about it. I'm sorry that you have to take some criticism for not getting projects done, but I think it's important to point out your role is advisory. We're staff. We're doing what we can. We're doing as much as we can. It's a small staff. We do a lot with very few people, so we're doing the best we can. I presented that list of things that that I think are some of our major accomplishments to point out simply that there's a lot going on. We've gotten a lot done, and actually the master plan thing that's the next big project on the list. We just wrapped up the Rivercrest restroom. We just wrapped up the Chapin project, the Chapin Park project. We're doing a few other smaller projects that are just all closing up, and so that gives us the ability to take our attention. So it's Parks and Rec director, assistant director, but also in charge of lots and lots of other things. Minute taker at PrAC meetings. Park planner. Denise is out in the field working with the crews right now to keep up, and all kinds of things like that. So we're doing as much as we can. But your goal of doing the parks master plans is still very much one of our goals, and it's going to be accomplished. And then the last little part of that about that specific project is Sean and Mike were the PrAC designated representatives to help us do the selection when we do the advertisement, and then we receive proposals from consultants that are interested in doing that. My sense of that is right now is we'll probably be doing the selection of that in January. Again, Mike's not here to speak for himself, and so I wanted to suggest I can communicate with Mike about this, but I got the sense with his schedule issues that he's communicated to me just recently that I'm not sure how available he's still going to be able to do that. We were hoping to have 2 PrAC members be on our selection committee for our consultant. And I know we'd also looked at having a neighborhood representative from each of the 2 park sites be involved as well. I don't know if you want to think about any of you that, so Sean has already indicated he'd be willing to do so. If anybody else would be interested in that, I think we'd probably might be looking for a backup for Mike. Again, he's not here to speak for himself, but that's possible. So, and we're probably going to be looking at some times in January, and I'm probably going to be emailing you pretty soon saying how do these days and time blocks look, and we'll try to work with schedules because I know there's work involved in that kind of thing. We can even do things in the evening if we need to. So,
How are you doing as far as neighborhood representatives?
well, Mr. O'Brien has volunteered to represent the neighborhood for Filbert Run, and so haven't heard of anybody else that wants to do that. Mike was going to kind of serve dual roles because he was going to be a
Also
PrAC
Caulfield.
representative, but he's also the Caulfield neighborhood, in the Caulfield neighborhood, which is where Glen Oak is at. So we might need to go back and revisit that one. So
And I have a Glen Oak person that I might be able to recommend.
yeah, if you want to suggest
Another
that.
board I serve on, Monday night's meeting, person in that neighborhood heard I was on this and specifically asked me, and he says, I call Scott Archer about every year or so, and now I don't have to ask
Okay.
him, I'll bug you. So
Well,
I'm sure he would probably
Yeah, if you
volunteer.
want to forward a name or suggest that they contact me, that'd be great. It's possible Mike still may be able to do this, so I'm sort of just saying as a backup plan, we might want to be thinking about that. So anyway, yeah, I would appreciate another possible name from that neighborhood in case Mike can't do that. So sorry about all the kind of bringing all those pieces together, but I thought that it all ended up kind of being related to each other, so I wanted to just give you all that information. So now that I've overwhelmed you with too many details, I'd be happy to answer questions or just let you discuss those things.
Well, I think one of the things I've always said on this committee is that we represent our communities, so it's like a representative committee. I mean, it's not unlike other committees, but so then we advocate for certain things. So then we develop a list that says these things are important to us. So what we really need to do as we move forward is continue to have that in the forefront of our mind, that we're advocating for certain things that we think are important and important to the people that we represent. I mean, we don't talk about that a lot, but we do. We represent the community. And this is one thing we've said that we're advocating for. And I think that the things that we advocate for and that we present, like we did to the commission, we should really feel passionate about and own those things, which we have been, and say these are the things we think are important, because we are advising the commission on what we think is important, what they ought to do, and then they go behind closed doors at some point, and then they think about this. So we have a certain amount of pull or power or whatever you want to call it in our advising. So I think that's one reason why this has remained in the forefront. Although we went through uncertain economic times, and arguably we're still there, but the SDCs are starting to accumulate, which is good, and the priorities just never were matched up. When the priorities were aligned, we were advocating for those things that we wanted, but we didn't get to the top list of the priorities. I mean, that's one way to explain it, and I don't think I'm giving you any new information, but I at least want to kind of go over that with us, that there's a reason, obviously, why we come up with these, and then when we own them, we advocate for those things, and we say, look, we, representing the community, think these things are important. And then we brief them on it yearly, and hopefully, they take action. They don't have to, but we give them advice.
And I do think, Brian, that's an excellent way to say that for the most part, your goals have been either aligned with or at least somewhat related to the Commission's goals. I don't think there really have been many, if any, that I can think of times that you've been divergent in terms of kind of going way over here where the Commission's goals are way over here. I think there are times where the resources that are applied to certain things are not as high as maybe the PRAX goals are, and that's probably more of a resources, financial issue versus a values issue of, we want to do this. And so I think it's been good. It's just a matter of funding. And the good news about the SDC report that I gave you is that what you don't have in there is, I also have, when you requested this, I think, Sean, you're the one that specifically asked for it, but I think everybody kind of head nodded with you and said, yeah, let's do an SDC report. And I can bring this back as often as you want, but we have our up-to-date financial reports. I didn't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of spreadsheets. I could do that if you want, but it's all public information. But to just give you kind of a good news report about the SDCs is that the SDC's projection, we're actually bringing in, we're at a higher percentage this point in our budget process than we would have thought. So they've come in. Now it could be, and we have to be careful about that, it's a 2-year process. So we could have just had this surge and it might dip back down in terms of development. That's what drives our funding for SDCs. But we've had, in the front end of this 2-year budget cycle from July 1 to now, we've had a high level of our SDC's budget already come in that we projected in revenues, which is good. But it could tail back off at the back end of the budget, so we got to be a little cautious. So the point of that is we get things like, for example, doing these park master plans. Those are budgeted for. We have no problem covering the funding to do that process. But then once those are done, then building the parks is another issue, and we got to look at that. Now, hopefully, we'll have accumulated more of those funds, and then we start, as I said before, we start looking at grant opportunities, and then we have to think about the prioritization of development, because right now the priority is getting the master plans done, but we have to have a vision for those to even start talking about developing those. And then the last piece of that is that ability to maintain what we develop, and that we have an effort underway that we're looking at. One of the commission's goals is to develop a parks utility fee sometime in the coming few years, so that we can fund. We're already behind on our maintenance, and as we add more things, if we build new parks, we're going to be even further behind. So I'd like to suggest we need to make that, and Prac, you can be a really important piece of the advocacy for that, and we've talked about that quite a bit for the last couple of years, as well as helping us advocate for some funding solutions that we can take care of the things that we're building, or that we've already built, actually, because development has already outpaced our ability to take care of things, and we're sort of doing the hamster on the wheel thing, but the wheel's going too fast for us sometimes. So anyway, just stuff to think about with that whole big picture thing.
Good on the STC stuff.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. And by all means, if you ever want any of that information, let me know how frequently you want those types of reports. If I give you an SDC report every month, it might be a little bit static or repetitive, but every few months, I think you might see some things change a little bit, and I could bring back, revenue up-to-date totals and say, hey, we're really way ahead or whatever, and we could really be thinking about some different things, or maybe not. So.
Actually, as I think through the SDCs, and I think through probably the two biggest goals, one is Phase 2 of Wesley Lynn, and the other is the master plans. Really, the logical goal that's not on there is then the completion of those two parks. Mm-hmm. Is there a chance you can look ahead at January or February and present a report that's directly related to that from a timing estimate? In other words, I see we will complete a master plan in May, and we're shooting for construction within 2 years on Glen Oak, but not Filbert Run, or vice versa. In other words, some of these are starting to feel like dreams and not goals. Mm-hmm. And how attainable are they? And looking at them here, I don't know how attainable they are in our near future. And it seems like some of them, they get to 5 or 7 years and we start to forget. Yeah. And maybe revisiting that might be important. Because one of my thoughts is I think there's too many goals. There's a 1-year goal setting. What are we going to do in the next year? There's maybe 3 things that we could complete. Now, the others are good things to remember for the follow-on year and keep just off the list. But that's my train of thought, that Wesley Lynn Phase 2 has been talked about for years. I'm not saying that it needs to be done now, but it's been talked about for 7 years. Is that a higher priority than Filbert Run and Glen Oak? Yeah. For me, probably not, just because we're not serving other communities, and that community is already being served. Yeah. But
excellent point, and we can definitely do that. We'll just, this is a kind of an ongoing discussion. I think that's where this committee is especially helpful. That's where you've, as a committee, not necessarily all of you have been on the committee, but I'm saying you as a committee have really guided where some of the development has happened and where we've had to sort of not develop. And I think a good example is you just talked about Wesley Lynn, but the Kanema Park that we just redid and completed last year, and we won a state award for that because it turned out so great and everything. That took almost 10 years to do, from the master plan to the development. Now that had to do with less to do with funding and more to do with just prioritization of where the funding was spent that we had available, and where we committed our staff time to going after grants or doing things, because we were building up until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we did a lot of new park development stuff, or redoing existing parks like the Rivercrest improvements and John Storm Park and all that kind of stuff. So then what happened is we kind of spent down the SDCs, and we sort of spent down our savings account. We spent it on good things, but we had to pick what are we doing and not doing, because we don't have the money to do it all. So PrAC was really important in helping us decide, as was our community, and there's our community-wide parks master plan, which is our guiding document, but even that can be a little broad for us sometimes because it has a lot of priorities and we don't know where to go. So absolutely agree with you, Sean, and I'd be more than happy to bring back those types of reports and we can start kind of focusing in. I think what you're talking about is probably like a 3 to 5 year plan is projecting as best we can with the funding that we'll have. But we are starting to, we did that development over the course of about my first 6 or 7 years here on the job, and I've been here 9, was lots and lots of new projects. We had, all the SDCs came in from the housing rush from 10 years ago and all that kind of stuff. And we had a big pot of SDCs. We had a fresh parks master plan that said go out and do all these things, and we bought property and built, and then we had to kind of slow down. Now we're sort of more into the planning stage and need to look out at that. And I think that's going to really be what PrAC's big role is going to be this coming year, is help us define now where we go forward, because I think we're going to be back looking at, we can probably do some new park development again, but I also got to keep waving that flag of don't forget about the maintenance part of it. We got to take care of what we build. So yes, I'll bring that info back on a regular basis. I think those are the discussions that are probably some of the most important that PrAC is going to need to have. And those of you that are going to be on the committee, I think you're going to have to help us figure out where we steer those priorities. So,
Bob,
just a comment. Looking forward, it's always frustrating because things don't move very fast. But looking back, I'm impressed with the accomplishments of the Community Services Department. I guess that's for the 2013 year.
Yeah, this is just last year.
Yeah, that's encouraging to see that looking back it's more optimistic than looking forward sometimes.
Yeah, you forget about things. It's nice to. I think that's something I'm probably going to do a little bit more regularly. Is bring you some of those types of accomplishment updates. And
my other comment, Scott, is I look at the goals that were set, and I don't mean to be critical, but we're advisory. And I look at number 1, it says identify funding. I don't know what role we have in identifying funding. Probably none. Maybe recommending. But my guess is at least I'm fairly ignorant on the funding sources of anything. Number 2, determine future plans. We're not determining. We may recommend, advise. Begin master planning. I'm not sure if we're going to sit down and roll up our sleeves and do the master planning, or if we're going to be reacting to work that the staff does and giving advice as we go along. Anyway, I've looked at those, and given my history back 25 or 30 years, these things kind of capture my attention, and these words are not appropriate for us. So next go around, I want to make sure that the words say what we're supposed to be doing. I don't want to be critical because I wasn't part of this, anyway, I've been looking at this for quite a while. One of these says, be informed of the goals of the city commission and boards as they relate to the goals of PrAC. I looked at the goals of the city. I couldn't find any that related to PrAC, except in a general sense. Mm-hmm. There was nothing about parks or recreation. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, and I feel better for saying it.
Amen.
Thank you.
Well, my spiel on the goals is I've never looked at them that they would be complete at the end of the year. These are the things that we are working on and we think are priorities. So I don't think we should. And it's going to take some wordsmithing. I agree with you, Bob, and I also agree with you, Sean, too. But I think we should instead of looking at these things to be accomplished in 1 year or this year, again, they should be these are things that we think are priorities that we will advocate for in 2014. So, and these are not in order. They're not in priority order here. So, but yeah, I think we should definitely have a discussion about that and maybe reword a few of these. And then the one comment about the one thing that I know there's no such thing as perfect information, especially in this type of setting, government. But I would like to have a little bit better information as a member of this committee, and you guys decide for yourselves. But I'd like to know where my priorities in an organization rack and stack with the larger organization. So if I say Wesley Lynn's a priority, you can tell me it's priority 9 right now, and with some level of certainty, it's not going to get done until. And this is just coming off of your conversation that you just had. And like I said, I know there's no perfect information, but a little bit better information as far as it's good to have that in focus because, we've got 2 or 3 projects that the high school can do for the next 3 years. It's good to have it on this list because they're going to be essentially working on phase 2, and they have been. So there's a reason for that being on the list, but you're not going to get phase 2 until, or at least be able, and like I said, it may be pie in the sky, but at some point during the year, could we find out where these would potentially rack and stack in priority based on other concerns that are going on in the city? That's just more work for you. So, don't I have to answer that? That's just those are my thoughts.
And I think that ties in with kind of my thought is I keep seeing these parks and these master plans, and I really want to hear from you what's achievable in the near run, and then what's the next few just beyond that? What's our realistic time frame on these?
I think
down the road, and that's why I give some analysis and come back. Maybe the new.
But then we don't take it off the list, but we chip away at it in other. We have some awesome opportunities just that we've seen in the last few years that we can like I said, actually work on not the master plan, but work on phase 2, quote unquote, of Wesley Lynn Park, and start to build. And wow. Anyway, I've spoken on that before.
Well, so. I think to try to be concise here, just to respond to both of you on your comments there, Sean's suggestion maybe about doing a sort of an offline. It's still a public meeting, so be open to the public, but maybe in a different space that's a little more informal, like at the Pioneer Center or someplace like that, where we just kind of do the round table thing, is do it like a work session.
Into the goals.
What we and doing what Brian's saying too. So it's those are one and the same thing. Developing the goals and then also developing sort of what does the staff's work plan look like, and that trying to bring those two together. What kind of happens here is typically we do our PRAC meeting once a month, and we don't meet 2 months out of the year, and occasionally we have to cancel a meeting because of different factors, and so we end up meeting 8-9 times a year maybe, and we try to cram everything into 2 hours. And I try to be. I know I've talked. I think I've talked a little bit more than usual tonight. I know I'm a little talkative sometimes. I guess that's because it's my job, and I'm supposed to try to give you lots of information. I feel compelled to do that, but I also have this. There's a filter that I have to have of I don't bring you every single thing in my reports. I could bring you 20 more things a meeting, but I don't think that's going to help. I think it's going to make the meetings less productive. So. Because we've sort of had this unofficial self-imposed time limit that we usually try to be out of here by 9. See how that goes tonight, but and so we try to cram a lot in, and I think what ends up happening sometimes we get onto goals and project discussions is we don't really have the time to get to that level that you guys are talking about. Just maybe why this work session idea might be real advantageous, especially with turnover on the committee. We're going to have some new people coming and that kind of thing. It might be really a good time to do that. And then we can draw out that conversation, because it's hard to get, we usually have 10 to 15 things on the agenda, and we have to kind of keep clipping along, and we don't get to drill down as much to those levels. And that's where maybe some of that, I kind of know, I have an idea of things, but I can't get, all that. So,
And I think the committee has changed. I first served on the committee 10 years ago, and we sat around a table downstairs at the Pioneer Center, and it was a very informal process, and the meetings were an hour and a half, and the agendas were light, and now we can barely break 9 o'clock rushing. So you're right, and it almost seems like maybe we should think about a commitment of maybe one or more of these meetings to help the rest of the year go more smoothly.
I agree with that.
And just that it's what I think is real important for me to remind you is it's your committee. Mm-hmm. Our job is to support you and to coordinate the meetings and to coordinate the flow of information. And obviously we have a good, I think, a really symbiotic working relationship. The staff and the advice. It's kind of an interesting thing too, because I work for, the arm goes over this way. I work for the commission. I work for the city manager who works for the commission. You're an advisory board of the commission. I don't really work for you, but I do work on your behalf a lot, and it's kind of an interesting thing. I guess it's just that how do we bring all those pieces together? And I think we've done it's been a fantastic group. I mean, continually for a number of years, even with people changing. PRAC has been a really good group, and if Bob, your comment about looking back just this 1 year and saying, well, it kind of feels good to look at what we've done. I think if we did a 5-year, if I did a 5-year back thing, you'd be even more surprised at how much has gotten done. So don't lose sight of the fact that PRAC has been very instrumental in driving a lot of those processes and advocating and making things happen. So,
one more thing, Scott. Most of those things on that report came through, at least we had reports from people that came in and talked about the Ermitinga House or whatever. Yeah. And some I had forgotten all about. And I haven't been on just a little over a year, I guess. But most of those things on that list, at least we've had some exposure to. But I'd forgotten about half of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that's really changed from 10 years ago is the reports that come to us that are then televised. We're able to go back and tell our neighbors, and that's definitely changed. That didn't occur before.
Yeah, it's nice. So. But just again, that it's your committee. You decide. If you want to try to have some work sessions, then if you get enough head nods that the majority of the commission agrees, and you say that's what we'd like to do, then my job is then to help you accomplish that and things like that.
And we did that this last year with the park planning. So we did most all that park planning came not here on our meeting night.
Right, for Parks Day?
Yeah, for Parks Day. So.
Yep, exactly. We had side committees or subcommittees, and we've had some of that going on with the dog park thing and some other things. So there's also that opportunity. So we're here to help you accomplish what your objective is and so forth. So
I'd like to make a suggestion that in the January meeting, and I know I'm not going to be here, but that we have an item on the agenda where we determine a good time in January or somewhere shortly after the election of officers, or the election of officers. Thank you very much. The election of the chair and the vice chair, to just determine a time in the January meeting for the work session. And the work session would be to, very appropriately, I think, determine the goals for the new year. And, however long you want to make that. And it would be, part of it would be looking and reviewing past goals and maybe adopting half or maybe all of them or whatever and rewording it. But also, talking about maybe putting the Willamette Falls Legacy Project on or the Newell Creek or something like that. So adopting some new ones. But then I think also, as you do that, you ought to consider the goals of the city as well. So That would just be my recommendation, that be determined in that first meeting, and then that work session be within January or February or something like that.
I agree.
So maybe
Sounds
talk
good.
about that. Yeah.
You want a motion for that, or just?
I think we're okay
Just
without
do
a
it,
motion.
I got notes on it,
Yeah.
and we'll make sure it comes
Yeah.
back to you. I'll make sure that's on the agenda somehow in January.
That sounds great. Going back up to the top of the mountain, or the bottom. We're going to go back to the bottom of the mountain and climb back up again.
Did you want to do the off-leash
Yeah,
dog?
do we need to talk about? I think and I was a little bit confused, although I didn't think we needed to amend the minutes, but didn't we conclude at the last meeting that Mike was going to brief the city commission on our decision?
Our
On
recommendation,
6,
right.
yes, on 6 alpha.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where we are still.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I think maybe some things have changed a little bit there that I can't speak for Mike, but the communication that he said was that my time is going to be more constrained. And so I'm not sure how that's going to go. And again, this is a good example of a goal that's been heavily driven by PRAC is this initiative
Right.
to do something. So you've already designated the parks that you believe could be good potential areas. You've determined to take those recommendations back to the commission, which was what you were asked to do by the commission originally. So you've done that. The other piece of the discussion was, and you asked to put this back on tonight's agenda, should we take that discussion out to the affected neighborhoods where these parks are in? That was the piece that was kind of still, what do we want to do? And so that piece, I think, it still needs to be figured out. But the first thing I think was to go back to the commission and say, here's the follow up to what
Right.
you asked.
And we haven't done that.
And that hasn't
yet,
happened,
right?
okay.
So we're kind of standstill.
It's like,
So-
it's really like that and the report almost should be done together.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
What's a 5-minute speech versus 10?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean the annual
Yeah.
report to the commission?
Combine
Exactly.
it with the annual
Especially if I'm
That would
not
be part of the
giving it.
report, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That can be part of that.
You caught that right.
That makes sense. Unless Mike just, because the last thing I heard him say was he would just he would present within the 3-minute time constraint as a citizen. I think he said that.
He did. I don't. My thought is if he's going to speak a little longer and we know it, Scott can
Yeah.
ask to put the item on the agenda.
Usually,
Not really a.
So then we're talking February. Is that what you're saying?
The earliest.
I think it can't happen until after the January meeting because
Yeah.
you're going
Right, okay, so
a
we-
new chair
right.
and vice chair, and probably you'll get nominated to go speak at commission.
So
yeah. When we do the annual report, it's actually a presentation, and you get
right.
10 or 15 minutes or whatever.
I
Really
think I
there's no-
took 15. Yeah.
Well,
But,
it's-
yeah.
it was on our goal, so that would be a good time, it was on our goals
Okay.
for the year.
So
Would be
we are
appropriate.
not then taking this to the neighborhoods until it has been brought
Right.
to the city commission. At such time, then
not get ahead of
dogs will
ourselves.
continue to be illegally off-leash at a lot of parks, but it's
As they are now.
Yes.
as they are
Yeah.
now.
And I almost
Comment.
think it gets worse in the winter. But that's
Okay.
I don't want to be walking my dog and.
So what I'm hearing is bring this back again in January. That I think once the new officers are elected, and then determining when the annual report is going to go forward to the commission. This might be tied with that.
Align it. I would say
Yeah.
not might be tied, will be tied.
I agree with that. Put the two as two topics for the inbound chair and vice chair to
Got it.
present to the commission.
Got it. Great.
It's already on our annual goal, so we're presenting the goals, it's just part of that
Yep.
presentation,
Right. Amplified, yeah.
amplified. yeah.
All right, very good, very good. Unless there are objections, we can move on to 6 Bravo, RV Park Master Plan update.
This is just a continuing kind of an update to keep you informed about the project, the process, and I reported to you, we reported at the last meeting that we're pretty close to a final product with our master plan of the RV park. It's been a little additional work, and then I was going to have Denise give you a quick report about some efforts of some things that tie into the Oregon City High School construction group and their projects, and some things that they that kind of affect the master plan of the RV park. So I'll let her do that.
So the high school construction group did the kiosk at the RV park, and they're working on the signage down there. And so we're in communication now in regards to how we'll finish that signage up. Along with the signage conversation, they brought forth a new concept of adding pergola and seating. And the original concept brought it into kind of the turn lane areas of the driveways. So we brought, we put a meeting together with our engineer from FDG, Furwood Design Group, Kelly Grover, who you guys have seen here before. She headed the project for the master plan. She and I went in and discussed with the group how we could conceptually relay their concept to fit into the master plan and enhance the kiosk, but also not change a lot of our dimensional issues that we have. And we came up with a really good workable solution between the kids and us, and it looks like from the kiosk towards the river, where I think it's about 4 or 5 parking spaces are notched in, we're going to run that pergola design, which is very similar to Wesley Lynn, and the benches in that space. Directly across the road is or across the main road going towards the river is a road going parallel to the river. So they'll stop before they get to that point because of the way our flood flows go right off that corner and then hit to the point of Clackamat with a lot of the debris. So small flood zone times, it shouldn't impact that too much, but when we get our high ones, it'll just be underwater. They're designing it pretty heavily like Wesley Lynn, and so my progress forward was to kind of let you guys know that that's their concept and that's what they're looking at. They do have a 3D model and are more than willing to come show it to you guys again and make their presentation. I've contacted building and planning to kind of go through what we need to do on our side as far as permits and reviews and, dot our I's and cross our T's. And it looks like because we're in that floodplain, the kiosk went through a review because of that. So we have potentially 2 reviews to go through, and depending on the sizing of footings and things, potentially some permits, but possibly not, because again, if it's all debatable about size. In all that, these kids are amazing at what they do, in that concept model, which is a 3D scaled model, is amazing. As long as we don't put increased impermeable surfaces in, it limits how many reviews we have to go through. So going back to the kids and talking to them about permeable surfaces, and I think that they'll be amenable to that with their project, and I think it'll tie in really well. So that was my last meeting with them, and then we can start moving forward.
I was wondering, can you email out kind of a drawing of, do you have that yet?
I don't have a drawing because their footprint doesn't fit necessarily into our current concept. However, I can send you a picture.
I'd
So-
just be curious to get a
Yeah, no,
better
it's-
visual. I'm trying to picture it, and I have one and the other, but I'm not sure I have the two together.
Right. I'll send out the photo, but it will be, the orientation will be different based on the layout. So if we can capture the footprint on the master plan and show you the concept, and it is conceptual because of the layout, but you'll at least get the gist of it.
Thanks.
Now, can I ask about, so the master plan itself is near completion on that. And at that point, everything then gets put on hold until funding is available?
Correct. So again, it's a 2-step process. You have to create a vision so that you can go after whatever the objective is. We'd like very much to update the RV park and make it a lot nicer. That's our vision and our goal. And we needed a concept plan that says this is what we're trying to do. This is how much it's going to cost. That one's kind of tricky because most of that project is not going to be SDC funding eligible because there's some reasons why. I won't get into all that level of detail right now, but we're going to have to figure out funding a little differently on that one. So yes, but the answer is yes, but we won't be able to even explore that until we have the completed master plan and vision to go forth with. I think once we have that nice vision, though, it'll give us some selling points that we can go after some funding, maybe grants or whatever the different things that we can do. So
Sponsorships, right?
different things, yeah. We'll have to get creative. That one's going to take some creativity on funding, but I think it's something we very much want to do.
Fantastic. I'm glad our high school class stayed connected like they did with that project, that master planning project.
Very much so.
Yeah, great. Anything else, guys?
No.
And gals? Okay, the legacy project update. Thanks for that information. I do have a couple questions, but did you want to speak to that?
Not really. I think hopefully you all got my email on that. That was kind of the idea, was to just send that to you and let you read it. I think the idea here is that you asked for kind of a standing update on this project to keep you posted. So Tony Conkle is our community development director. That's the email that I forwarded to you. He has agreed to basically give me a monthly update that I can give to you with sort of the key things that have taken place since the last time. And I think in this one, there's a lot of information. One thing is that the amount of community input has been fantastic on this project. There's an online survey and there's a lot of community outreach going on with meetings. Tony told me yesterday that they're up to close to, I believe the number is close to 4,000 responses on the survey, which is amazing. So obviously that's not all just inside Oregon City, but it's obviously a project of regional interest. So the main things I wanted to point out were just that there are a couple of upcoming meetings that you might want to be aware of if you're interested in attending. The next Tuesday, right here in this room, on the 10th of December at 5:45, there's going to be a joint City Commission and Planning Commission meeting to review the project, and that's going to be televised and online and so forth if you're interested. On December 12th, a week from tonight, at 6 o'clock at the Ainsworth House is Community Interactive Event number 3. So it's the kind of the open community forum type of a thing. I will tell you that at that event, there will be a lot of new information presented with conceptual drawings and things that have been developed out of the community input. So it's sort of like that kind of process where you start to get actual concepts starting to form, and you're going to start seeing those at these types of meetings that are coming up. I got a little sneak preview on them at a meeting I got to sit in on yesterday, and it's exciting. It's really neat and exciting. So that's what I want to make sure you're aware of, those upcoming community events and opportunities to see what's going on if you're interested. And there's always the website, that rediscoverthefalls.com website, that I would encourage everybody to take a look at that if you haven't already. So that was kind of what I just wanted to point out, outside of what you already got in writing.
Yeah, I was just at some point in the document that it said something about a final something, and when I saw final, I thought, wow, what? There's nothing final about this.
Yeah.
About this plan, is there?
Let me attempt to answer that question to best that I can. This is a master planning process, which means that has to go through a land use process, just like our parks master plans do, and the new ones will. And that is, for this one, master plan and zone change land use application is scheduled to be submitted on February 14th. The first Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for April 24th. So that's when the master plan starts to become finalized in terms of, they did have an objective in this process of completing a master plan by this coming next summer. If you recall the presentation that Christina from our planning department gave you. I forgot to mention in my comments, the staff, Tony and his staff offered to come to our January meeting and give you an updated presentation. I think it might be real beneficial to take that opportunity. I know we've got a lot of items that we're talking about bringing back and so forth, but I don't think there's any single project that's bigger than that one, and it's important. So I need to actually respond to whether or not we want to have them come back and give you an updated report on that project. And those are the type of questions. And Brian, you could attend as a guest or whatever if you wanted, and come to the meeting or watch it online or whatever. But would you like me to have them do that, or would you prefer not to? It's up to you.
One thing I would say is that, I thought that we had yet time to kind of come up with if there was any ideas or if there was any input from this committee. I thought we still had time to kind of slide that across the table and say this is a good idea, or we think this is a good idea.
I think that's why it would be advisable to take our community development staff up on their offer to come back and visit with you again, so that we could have that conversation. I know, like I said before, our meetings are, at least at the most once a month, and it's not a lot of time. There hasn't been a lot of time to discuss that, and that there could be some sharing of information. They could give you an update on what the public input has said so far. That could give you, as a committee, the opportunity to say, we need to take a look at some of this, and then by the next, by your next meeting, you could develop some thoughts or whatever, or you might have those at that meeting. They might just kind of, work themselves through or whatever.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, and then we've talked about setting goals for that, and that kind of goes into more of a need for a work session right after the January meeting, where we could have a nice group discussion, come back in February and act on it.
Yeah, sounds like that. I'd strongly suggest we might want to have them come back and do that report and get some interaction and figure out a little bit more about what you want to do as a committee in terms of, here's the timelines that if you want to give any further recommendations, you got to have them in by this time.
Right.
And that's,
Not having been a part, this is just one example. Not having been a part of a lot of the process, and I mentioned this before, but the trails and the linkages, and it just dawned on me as I was reading that report that there's a pedestrian bridge across 99, and if we're looking at trails that are going through, downtown Oregon City and into this site, we ought to think of having a trail going outside and then taking advantage of that pedestrian bridge that already goes across 99 and give us access. Those type of ideas are still on my mind.
There's clearly a discussion going on about that. When we did the tour before the meeting, Christina specifically talked about that.
Cool.
And that easement that heads of the property,
Yeah.
the portion that heads
Great.
down towards Kenema, so that
That's awesome.
right
That's,
on their mind.
yeah, the
Yeah.
connections, the pedestrian, non-motorized connections from basically downtown Oregon City, around 10th or so, where our promenade sort of stops right now, and getting extended to that property and through the Falls Legacy Project property and beyond is very much a part of what's being developed. So that might give you a little bit of assurance that that's definitely on the it's a priority in that thing, but the specifics aren't ironed out. Nothing is, everything is still conceptual.
Because three things I was thinking about were trails, specific sites, small sites, and then also perhaps even a small park. Just a small area that was a park within that. So I had three things in mind: the trails, sites like this is a X, Y, or Z. Significant to Parks and Rec and maybe the history of Oregon City too. But
Like an interpretive site?
yeah. And then thirdly would be, should there be a park? 300 square feet of park, or a token park somewhere.
designation.
Bigger than that, maybe.
Even a designation of this area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'll see some of that stuff beginning to form in some of these
Okay.
multiple. It's not like a single concept; it's multiple concept options that are going to be,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
kind of being molded. And I think you'll find that everything that you just said, to some extent or another, is in those concepts.
We can ask whoever comes to focus on those issues and not recreate the entire project, given the time that we'll have, but to focus on the areas of interest. You mentioned 3. And as I remember, those were all part of the early discussion.
Scott,
Trails and parks and trying to connect through the abandoned railroad bed that goes out, the rail bed, and over the highway some way. That's all been discussed.
I agree, Bob. Scott, I'm sorry to interrupt you earlier. I thought you were finished. My apologies. On the Trails Master Plan, I don't have a copy of it anymore, but I believe it's online.
It is.
I was wondering if I can't find it, or if you know right where it's at, if you could highlight it to us in an email where that portion of the Trails Master Plan applies, because I'd like to see where it basically dead-ended.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure we didn't think at the time
Mm-hmm.
to push through there.
Mm-hmm.
But we could still, through logical connections, say it should have.
Because I'm walking my family through there, and I'm walking across that bridge, and I'm going up to the prom, and I'm going up to have a burger at Mike's.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
That's part of this.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. So I can see what I can do to get you some concise information and maybe send out. What you're talking about right now is the stuff that's going to be sort of publicly unveiled next week at these at the commission work session next Tuesday, and this community forum on Thursday. So if there's any way for you, if you're really interested, to go to one of those meetings or to view the commission meeting is viewable online. That's a nice thing if you can't make it to the meeting. Is I think you'll see some of these questions that you're asking will be answered through those presentations.
Yeah.
And then you'll have a little better idea. It might even clear up some of what you're talking about right now, that maybe even some of your concerns or what have you. And then having the presentation, it'll be even more refined by the time we do a January presentation here.
So Scott, yes, please ask Tony to be here in January.
Yeah, not necessarily Tony, but one of the staff. Yeah,
5 minutes ago.
In a roundabout way, right?
Yeah, got it.
Tony or one of his staff.
Yes.
Correct.
This is a very unstructured meeting. It seems like
No, I like it. We're going to make a full circle here in a second. But yeah, we are assuming our opinion is valued, I guess, is what I'm.
Well, you can keep going online and sending comments all
Yeah,
the time.
right.
Don't you do that?
But as a body, I'm just saying, as a body, as an advisory body to the commission, et cetera, I think it carries some weight. Or should, I don't know. Maybe I'm having what's the Han Solo? What did Han Solo say to Luke?
delusions of grandeur.
Delusions of grandeur. Yeah. Anyway.
And you came up with that so quickly.
Okay. So let's move on to 6D.
So this could be pretty quick. We have 3 positions that are being, what's the right word I'm trying to say? The 3 terms that expire at the end of December. Brian Watt is not eligible to apply again because of term limits. Brian Burke is not going to apply. So both of the Bryans, we're losing the Bryans. And then Bob Burns' position expires, but Bob is eligible to serve a second term and has applied to do so. And we kind of skipped to the interview process because he's already on the commission, and the mayor has said if an existing member, so long as the committee recommends his appointment, would support that reappointment. So you need to take a formal action of supporting Bob's reappointment if you want to give me some such action, unless you don't want
I make
Bob
a motion
to join.
that this committee unanimously recommends Bob's reappointment to a
I'll second
term.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Want me to leave the room?
No. Does it come with hugs or?
Do I vote?
Yeah, you
I offer my enthusiastic support. I think Bob's an awesome member of this committee. So
All right, so call the
we
question.
have general consensus, or do we? Do you?
Yeah, you probably just need to
Yeah.
call for the.
Okay, so all opposed to Bob being redesignated to the committee, say aye.
He said opposed. Making sure.
Oh, okay.
You did, yeah.
I'm sorry. All of those that approve of or agree with Bob's, thank you. Bob's recommendation going to the mayor, I guess, is the great way to put it, or the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm hearing none. So we'll send your name back to the mayor.
Okay, thank you.
So on that point, the reappointments actually won't take place until January, the second meeting in January, because the commission's not going to meet at their first meeting in January. And so you won't get a letter of notice until close to the time we have our next meeting, but that you can just assume everything's good.
Am I supposed to appear to that meeting or not?
No.
No, okay.
Just a formality. And so the next part of this is the vacancies. Now we still have two vacancies. It's an open application thing, and we have one new application as of just today, and it's actually a potential. Somebody brought up at the last meeting that we don't have a Pioneer Center representative on the committee right now. That's one of our kind of standing positions that we haven't had for a little while. And Kathy Wiseman was trying to do her best to find applicants of people that are participants at the center that would be interested in being on this committee and represent the center. And she just found somebody who's very interested in that she thinks would do a really good job. And that person, I haven't even seen the application. It's on its way to my office, apparently from the Pioneer Center. So we won't have a chance to do the interview thing until January. But that's in the works, and we'll still have, even considering, if that works out, we'll still have at least one position. So need to do anything we can to put the word out. We'll continue to do our stuff that we do with the city to advertise and let everybody know. But if you know of anybody that would be interested in doing so, please send them my way. So that's where we're at.
It'd be nice to have a Filbert Run representative.
We're going to miss our swimming pool representative.
Yeah.
That's right. And you've been
I'll
a great
give one
advocate for the swimming
one
pool.
final PrAC member report on that maybe tonight.
Anyway, that's all on that.
Excellent. Okay, Park Day event, and this is we asked that this item be included in the agenda tonight so that we could, and in fact it was me, I said we ought to have it on the agenda because likely we'll just kind of push it until next year unless we talk about it today. And so that what was on the table is that we needed to start planning. We needed to start, I think, making decisions, maybe not, binding decisions, but I think we need to make a decision on what we're going to attach this to or what we plan on to attach this to, maybe who could be a part of the planning process, and perhaps another work session, which we did have a work session for this, 2 or 3 of them actually, for this last year. So again, I just think we need to start adding a little bit of flesh to the straw man.
Did we
And-
agree to piggyback that with one of the movies in the park?
Yeah, I think movies in the
So
park
I was going
was
to move it to a Friday
Yep.
in August. Is that?
Yeah, I think that was general consensus. I liked that idea.
That was a great idea.
So a day in the park and then just leading right into the movie.
I think Scott was
in the
talking about
park.
putting it with the most popular movies, so we get
Yeah,
the
we can
best
figure out
attendance and
whichever one
Boost it.
seems to be the best.
Okay, and then if there was anybody who felt passionate about that was here, I mean, we could definitely nominate a couple people that aren't here tonight to do it, but.
And just a note for advertising effectiveness, April will probably be the deadline for
Okay.
getting the summer
Yeah.
information out and tying that to the movie. So if you
Excellent.
want to splash
That's
in
good
the trail
information.
news, that timeline working backwards might be appropriate.
Good
You know,
point, Denise.
I know Lisa well enough to, I mean, I'm not going to speak for her, but I think she'd want to be involved in that again. She's got a lot of connections in the community, so anyway,
I'm wondering if
and then
maybe,
maybe one or two more people, or maybe the whole committee have a work session on that and just and hash that out. And anyway, that's my input on that.
I was wondering if maybe you could include on the agenda item kind of a parenthesis that says, reminder this April thing. So maybe a deadline should be, our first goal is to set the date. We've already got a location and a venue change, so that's good. I mean, that's a major key component. And maybe determine that by February and set a goal out there for the next step, and maybe 2 months prior to the other deadline, and then move to the next goal.
Will do.
Follow the rabbit. Yeah, and just on the goals, I don't want to butt into your business next year, but like I said, Willamette Falls and Newell Canyon came to mind that I think we should determine as a priority. That's my opinion.
But
I see
yeah,
Newell. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, we don't have a whole lot of say in Newell Canyon in that's owned by Metro.
Right, but I see something that is moving and it has potential to move, and I think what we should advocate for is connection into
connection parts.
into parks, into Oregon City proper. I'm sorry. Here we are. I've always concerned this, as the sort of the center of gravity of Oregon City right here. Even though I live up on the hill, but anyway, so
The
we can
car at the center
advocate
holds
for
a lot of weight.
yeah,
Right.
we can advocate for, we understand where this project is going, but you heard me earlier tonight. I think there's other ways to look at it, and we can still maybe be influential in that, and that's for you guys to decide. That's just my opinion.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I personally plan on following it very closely. Obviously, Adam is following it closely, but for years I've sat here and been told, kind of, not by Scott, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but the general consensus was this was Metro property and it was closed and you don't go there. So to hear there's an opportunity to go in there in some way potentially, I think is really exciting, and everybody, including PrAC, should be getting behind it in whatever way we support it. So whether that's making recommendations in support of something the organization is doing, if it's worthy of that, those are things that we should consider doing next year, I think.
Sorry, I went backwards again, but this is my last meeting, so I've got to say it right. I'd have to come as a citizen next time. So
Feel free.
You get 3 minutes as a citizen.
Yeah. Man, I can blather on and on until 9:30 as a committee member. Man.
We're going to have to make an exception.
You're in charge now, so you can do whatever you want. But
Yeah. So other general business. Anybody bringing other general business to the table tonight? Okay. Thank you. PrAC member reports. Let's start on the other end. Brian, do you have anything?
It's my last meeting. It's kind of a sad time to leave. In other words, there's so much great stuff happening in the city and Parks and Rec Committee, but life goes on and we're all busy, and so that's one less thing for me to have to do. And so I'll be watching you guys occasionally, hopefully on TV. And but thank you for your time and listening.
You'll be missed.
Thank you.
I just want to say, Brian, I haven't served with you very long, but I've seen you at a lot of meetings, and I appreciate your service to the city. It's well noticed. I think a lot of people see it. I see your name on other meeting things, and I hope to see you again on another committee.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say, Brian, I served with you years ago when you first moved back from the Air Force, and I appreciate your service to our country and to our community, and we need more people like you in this city. And I hope one day, you're up there in a commission seat or a mayor's seat eventually.
Wow.
Thank you.
How about that? Something we don't know.
I have nothing to report.
The pool is great. It's awesome. I'm always there, and the staff is great. So I just had to say something about the pool. The Oregon City swim team participated in the Three Rivers League relay meet tonight, and that's where I came from, Lake Oswego. And the Oregon City swim team is doing well. The high school swim team, that is. So having a good time doing that. My Thursdays will be full until February. So mixed blessings leaving the committee during this time, and I always seem to work around the meets and the meetings. But there will definitely be a vacancy in my heart, I think, because I like being involved in this way, in the city. So we'll have to fill that vacancy with something. I'm not sure what that's going to be. Hey, more time with the kids initially. So.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't give you a 1-minute report on the South End Advisory Committee process. So I wrote out a letter that'll go to the Planning Commission and the City Commission. And I would ask that Scott take a look and make sure I have the titles of the people correct.
Okay.
If you would do that.
Sure thing.
Don't mess with my recommendations. But just
No problem.
no.
Just spelling.
Just know if you find something where I've gone astray, I'd appreciate
Sure.
that too.
So you'll leave me with that this evening?
Take
then?
one and,
Okay.
and pass them on if you would. I won't submit this until after the next Planning Commission meeting, which is, I think it's the 9th, I believe, of December. So I'll check in with you, Scott, first before I
Great.
fire it off.
Sure thing.
But I try to focus on two things. One was the public input that I thought was excellent. The opportunities for public input were excellent. And sometimes you hear criticism, why didn't I know, or why didn't somebody tell me? There were a lot of opportunities, and I tried to mention those in my letter. And the other was the focus on parks and trails, which I found very interesting. So that's my report.
Great.
And once again, thanks to both Brians for your good work. You'll be missed.
And just while on the topic of the South End plan, Bob, I want to thank you for all your efforts in doing such a good job of representing this committee for that. And you, I think, have been an excellent liaison to that committee from the Parks Committee. So,
It was
thank
very
you.
interesting. A lot of new things and new terminology and new language for me, but it was very interesting.
Ready for a second career as a planner now?
No. Mr. O'Brien knows.
I'm going to jump into my staff reports.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, staff reports.
This will be real quick. I already talked about the staffing changes. I made mention of that earlier. And I guess just in the public meeting setting here, I want to thank Larry Potter for his
Definitely.
almost 13 years of service. He is one of the hardest working people I've ever seen, been around in my life, and was extremely dedicated to the city and did a lot of good things. And he just chose to want to explore some other things at this point. He's still around. He lives not quite in the city. He's close to the city, but he'll be around, and you'll probably bump into him. So he's. But I just wanted to publicly in this setting wish him well, and we're doing some other things behind the scenes with him to thank him and recognize him and so forth. The recreation report, I gave you a copy of that. Denise put that together as she does every month. And hard copies, I forgot to send that out in your agenda announcement. But if you have any questions about that, let us know. And I want to take the opportunity to thank the Bryans, Brian Watt and Brian Burke, for your service on PRAC. I think some of the things that have already been said, I echo, and then some. Brian Watt has been serving for several years. This is your second term. I think you served a partial term your first term. And Brian, I just really appreciate your insight, the different viewpoints that you brought, your enthusiasm, your courageous leadership, because you've spoken up and you've made a difference in a lot of different things, and you've done some things I think that you really helped be a good leader for the committee, and done some great things. I talked earlier about how I think you were the first one on PRAC, the first chair that went to the commission and did a report, or at least that I can remember. I may not be remembering that exactly correctly, but at any rate, some things like that. And then your advocacy for the swimming pool in particular. I know you've got a very strong passion for that, and there have been some things that have happened, I think, because of your advocacy there, and some good things. So just thanks for everything, and I know you've not just on PRAC, but you've served the community in other ways, and also your military service. I thank you for that as well personally. I very much appreciate that. So thanks for all that. And Brian Burke, same stuff for you. I appreciate everything that you've done, and you just have served very, very well. You've been at all the meetings almost, except for the few, and I appreciate your service to the city. And also, Brian, if you didn't know, Brian also serves our community as a firefighter, and I thank you for that very much so as well. So Brian has been a great member of this committee, but is also an ongoing great member of our community and serves us well. So just to do this, to take the time, I appreciate it a lot, because it takes folks to be dedicated to want to do this, and it hasn't always been the case. There have been times where we've struggled a little bit here and there to keep our membership. Sean, you can probably relate to some of that, where in some of those earlier times when I first started on the job, it was, sometimes it was a struggle to have enough people and all that. But even though it doesn't look like it tonight, we've got a full committee. Well, for a few more weeks, and then we'll have we got a couple more spots that we're going to fill. But I think the point is just that there have been, I think because of the folks like you guys and all of you that are on the committee right now, and people that have been on the committee in the last few years have been so enthusiastic about this, and have basically put a really good face on the Parks Committee, and people want to serve, and I think that's just a testament to you and to the folks that have served before you as well. So anyway, thanks for everything, and we're going to have cake after this, so please stick around and have a piece of cake. That concludes my staff report.
Piece of cake?
That's it for staff reports. Okay,
So my closing comments, it really has been an honor, and it's been fun. It's been, just being here for whatever it was, the 4.5 years, however long I was on the committee, and seeing the different people that are serving on this committee, and there have been so many times that I've been sitting here thinking, wow, why do I feel like the dumbest person sitting here? Because there's so many people, and continue to be, on this commission that are not only, active citizens in the community, but they're really intelligent, and they really bring that, but and when you combine it all, and the different viewpoints and the different skills and experience that we all have, I think it's remarkable. I really do. And I sat around tables all the time in the Air Force, and I just think it's been a pleasure to serve with you guys.
Don't be a stranger.
Okay.
Yeah.
And having said that, wow, look how I went
right,
over.
You really
there.
did it, Pirla.
I blew it. But we're looking at January 23rd for all those things. That's a 3-hour meeting at least on the January 23rd. Does anybody have any problems with that? That the three that are here, okay, that will be at that meeting. All right, and then we're gonna cut the cake up, and I think that's it, because my little marker doesn't go down any further than that. Oh, did I say
2014.
it is
My
2014.
goodness
So
sakes.
next meeting is
Next
in
year.
2014, next year. So we're adjourning the meeting and this is going to be fun here, at